All right, everyone, welcome to the first episode of 000, the war inside and out. Mark Andrews, how are you, champion?
Yeah, good, mate. How are you?
Yep, very good, mate. Welcome to Kurrajong.
Oh, it's beautiful out here, isn't it?
Yeah, so we'll try and use this as our setting for the podcast from now on.
Sweet.
So, mate, we've been obviously talking for a couple of months now and just sharing our experiences, time in the cops. We've both been through some shit in the last 20 years, 30 years.
Yep.
We've just been talking with other police and first responders and really just thought we'd just create a podcast and just share our experiences from in the police. Also talk about our experiences with PTSD, how we've been managing in the last X amount of years, talk about our mental health, the support we've had, the support we haven't had, you know, yourself dealing with insurance companies and the struggles that you've experienced over the time.
Yes.
So really this is just a platform that we wanted to share our stories with, and hopefully it helps other people to know that they're not alone, for someone that they can reach out to, that they can talk to. So mate, thanks very much for doing this, and you know, I've been inspired and uplifted by your courage and the bravery that you've been shown yourself lately, and of intimate knowledge of the struggles that you've had. And so thanks, mate, for sharing everything that we're going to go through. Today will be like the first episode. And
Pleasure, mate. No, it's been, you said I inspire you, mate, but you've inspired me to come out and talk about it because, as you know, you feel so alone with your thoughts and your feelings, and think it's something wrong with you, and especially with the group of mates we used to hang around with, it would have been a sign of weakness to have admitted what we're actually been going through and stuff like that, and our egos definitely took over. So it's comforting knowing that I wasn't alone.
Yep.
I know that's bad for you because that means you've had to go through the same things I've had to go through, but it's comforting to know that it's not something that you are alone with. And I know there's a lot of other people out there too that have been afraid to talk about it or even come out with it because of that fear of not feeling that they're normal or something like that, or just ashamed about how people are going to judge them. So
100%.
So hopefully if this can even just lift the lid on someone else to come forward, and that just one person, that's a success. So
yeah, definitely. Mate, we were really tight, you know, around that 2000 to 2004 period when we were at Penrith Police Station. And after I left, definitely for all the experiences and pain and suffering I was going through, I just upped and left and ran away because I thought I was the only person going through it.
Yep.
I felt really alone, and then spent the next 15 years really distancing myself from everyone because I thought I was the odd one out. And then obviously we've made contact a few months ago after 15 years and realised that, you know, we've been going through some similar stuff, and I mean, this is just about trying to bring everyone back together rather than suffering alone, I guess.
Yeah, definitely. And just that disappearing, I did the same. Just stopped going to social settings, stopped accepting invites, and then after a period of time, the invites start drying up and you just don't turn up, and you just sort of disappear off the social scene altogether, I suppose, and just completely disappear. And again, no one misses you, even though, you know, you've got this tight bond with all these blokes, but you don't get missed anyway. So I think just life goes on, and I think that's, you know, just everyone else has got their own struggles, and that's, I can appreciate that, but I think that makes you feel even more alone because you are concerned that what you've got is different to what everyone else, and maybe not as strong as them because they continue to be able to continue on with their life. But looking back at it now, I think it was just a way of masking what we're going through, what we actually were doing, and I think a lot of people are still doing that. Yeah,
definitely. Well, we're going to talk in depth over, you know, hopefully many episodes about all of our experiences and what we've experienced after the cops, and just so everyone can get to know us, I guess. What year did you join? How long were you in for? And where did you work?
I joined in March 1988. I was 18 years old. I'd only just finished the HSC in November 97. 87, sorry, not 97.
18 years old.
18 years old I was. I remember, 28th of March 1988. Mate's still living at home at my mum's place. Mate, I was a kid still. I hadn't grown up. I wasn't an adult, and for me, all of a sudden, to be thrust into a policing world, and I had no idea what I was in for.
Yeah.
It took me by surprise. Like, I guess the excitement overtook any fear or any concerns I did have, but again, I had no idea what I was in for.
Yeah.
And I was definitely not prepared for it. Like, I had no life skills. I was straight out of school. I was
Yep.
raw, no life experience whatsoever. And that is not the attributes that I think are required to be a police officer. You need to have life skills. You need to have experienced some things to be able to cope with. Like, your first day on the job, it's just not an ease into it. It was, you're there, you do whatever comes in. So
Yeah.
definitely underprepared for it.
Was 18 a common age back then? Were you relatively obviously the youngest, but was there other 18-year-olds in the academy, or?
Yeah, there was other 18s there. I wasn't the youngest. I was probably about 2 or 3 younger than me.
Really?
You had to be 19 to actually be attested.
Uh-huh.
And I turned 19 probably just under 3 weeks before I'd been attested. I got attested on the 17th of June, 88.
Mm-hmm.
Birthday was 24th of May, so a couple of weeks after I turned 19, I was sworn in as a police officer.
Wow. Whereabouts did you work?
Straight up to Blacktown. Very first day, Blacktown.
Straight into the heart of Western Sydney.
Yeah, straight into was the busiest station at the time, and it was infamous then because of the Anita Cobby murder.
Okay.
That all occurred at Blacktown, and also the Zarkos. There was a police shooting where they killed a bloke called Zarkos from a police pursuit, and the police were heavily criticised for that. So there's a lot of bad blood in the area with the Zarkos family and the policing around that area and whatnot. So there were 2 relatively major incidences that occurred just before I'd arrived at the Blacktown station. So it was fairly well known, Blacktown Police in the area.
What was the culture like inside the station amongst the troops? Do you remember?
Yeah, mate, they were hard. The police of those days were like big, like they were tall. There was the height and weight restrictions when I joined, so they were all big blokes. Like, I was like tiny, I was a kid, and they were intimidating. Like, these hardened coppers, they were intimidating. The one stripers back there, it wasn't just because they'd done 12 months, they'd actually done 5 years in the cops.
Yeah.
They were first class constables, and mate, they were experienced. They knew what they knew what they were doing. Your senior constables, they were 10 years in the job and stuff like that. And then your senior sergeants then who ran the place, like, you had a genuine fear of them. Like, you wouldn't want to look sideways. If you look wrongly at them, they'd be ripping into you, or if you got caught up to their office, you'd be shitting yourself. So
Yeah.
there was definitely this discipline around it, and there was definitely a culture of you had to be hard, you had to be tough. You couldn't show any weakness because they'd rip it out of you, and it took me probably 6 months to be accepted, and that was pretty much after I'd had my first time on the drink with them. And that was pretty much how you were accepted, that you could drink and be trusted by drinking with them. And that was even drinking on shift.
Yep.
Obviously is not acceptable, but it was back then as being acceptable behaviour, that if you're not going to drink on shift with your mates, and you couldn't be trusted, and you'd be isolated pretty much, and no one would work with you or trust you. As I said, if a bloke didn't drink, they couldn't trust him. So
Yeah.
they pretty much, if you didn't fit in, and mate, being an 18-year-old, I was impressionable, I just wanted to fit in. So pretty much whatever they were going to tell me or what I had to do, I was going to do it just to make sure I slotted into their culture and was made to feel part of it. So
Yeah. How long were you at Blacktown for?
I did 4 years at Blacktown.
Yeah, okay.
So straight up 4 years.
Yep. So that takes you up to about 23?
Yeah, it was 23, so up to 1992.
Yep.
Yeah.
Where did you go from there?
From there I went straight to Penrith.
Okay.
I did a straight swap with a bloke.
Yep.
Went to Penrith.
Do you remember a reason why, or you just wanted
mate,
to change, or?
Yeah, I was playing police football at the time. There was a bloke that was playing, and he just he wanted out of Penrith and wanted to change, and he asked if I wanted to swap to Blacktown.
Yep.
I thought, yeah, go to Penrith, because I was playing with the Penrith police side, and most of the blokes that were in the team worked at Penrith, so I thought, it'd be I guess a lot more fun, and
Yeah.
work with the blokes that I played football with. And back then, they'd actually look after you. They'd roster you off on days off so you could play footy and all that sort of stuff. They'd actually accommodate you to actually be part of the team and that. And I guess being part of the football team also helped you fit into the culture a lot better too. So the culture back then was playing the footy team, go out and the drink and all that sort of stuff. And it sort of placed you up on that pedestal a bit, which obviously fed into your ego a lot. Because you had that sort of like, it wasn't a respect, but you sort of like, people treated you differently around the station because you were playing police football and because you were, I don't know, deemed part of the in group or whatever it is. So it was, because police football back then was huge. Like there was about 18 or 19 teams in the competition. I think it was the second largest competition behind the New South Wales Rugby League at the time. So in terms of team numbers and stuff like that, and massive sponsorships. Like we had like Jim Beam's, licensed premises. We had massive sponsorships in on it as well. So it was a fairly big competition. Ex-first grade players were playing. A lot of them. I was definitely part of a culture that, again, being young, it was good to be made to feel part of, and as I said, made you feel sort of like invincible and just part of that.
If anyone just heard that noise, so my neighbour, she can't drive. She's got a manual car, and every time, like, it's a bit of a sloping driveway, and every time she leaves, she just so mate, with our background, you shit yourself when you hear things like that.
Someone just stole a car, I thought. And while I was at
Then
Blacktown too, after about 2 years, I actually did. I completed the tactical response group training, so I was a member of the part-time TRG, which we were back up to the full-time TRG. I only got to do that for probably 6 months before there was a royal commission into one of a search warrant, I think on Gundy or something like that. There was a search warrant conducted which was deemed illegal, and they ended up disbanding the TRG. Then for a number of years there was no elite squad, and then they formed the operational support group down the track. But I was part of the TRG whilst I was at Blacktown, and from Blacktown went to Penrith. Penrith just mainly GDs, and then from Penrith while I was GDs I then got I don't know how many years I was there, but I didn't end up I met my wife Diane at Penrith. After we were married and all that, we then moved to a little country town called Braidwood, where we were planning on sort of like establishing ourselves out in the country and settling in the country for a long period of time and raising our family out there. But we only did just under 2 years out at Braidwood. And then,
how was the adjustment going from Penrith to Braidwood?
For me it was difficult being a city boy, but it was easy for Diane because she was a country girl. And she made me adjust pretty well. And her family made me adjust pretty well because I was used to the country life, and they pretty much gave me tips on how to be accepted in the community. So I got involved in the local cricket team and football team and pretty much immersed myself in their lifestyle down there. So I became part of the community and things like that. So and I actually enjoyed it because I guess it was how policing was meant to be, being out there and engaging with the community, talking to them, not always reacting, but being proactive, like going and talking to them, and the amount of stuff they'd tell you was incredible. Like, and just being friendly with them, and like everyone, like I'd go to the pub and people would come and talk to me and that. I wasn't isolated or nothing like that. They just appreciated the fact that I was there to help them. So it was a good experience.
How old were you then?
Mate, I would have been late 20s then. So, because we just had my first daughter. She was young. Died just fallen pregnant with our second child, Matthew, and that was half the reason we transferred back to Penrith, was just because her family were living up at Muswellbrook at that time, and my family were all up at Penrith, and we weren't planning on having a child so quickly after the first one, so we just wanted a bit of family support. So in hindsight, probably not the best thing to have moved back, but you don't know that until after that. But there was a few incidences that happened while I attended down at Braidwood, which, not realising the effect that it had on me, probably would have shortened our stay anyway. So
we'll get into those experiences, but I can imagine if there's not much support in metropolitan Sydney, there wouldn't be any in Braidwood.
No, there's none. Although the commander was pretty good. He of anyone, like, he would ring me and a couple of times, but again, it wasn't much in terms of like attending counselling or anything like that. It was just pretty much a phone call or how's things and all that sort of stuff. But I think it was just more of a check-in, not pretty much offering anything. And one of the ones, as I said, we'll talk about later on, one of them deeply affected me only because it was probably the first time I'd attended a fatality, or it was the first fatality I attended to where I had my own child.
Yeah.
And the impact was completely different to the other fatalities I'd attended to. Like the experience of attending and dealing with parents from that, because I was a new parent at that time, had a complete profound effect on me in terms of the way I coped in that regard. So
Yeah.
I think my barrier that I had put up in terms of dealing with other ones got completely knocked down with that one.
Yeah.
So my whatever coping mechanisms which weren't healthy anyway, like the drinking and stuff like that, this one I was just emotionally, I had no protection, and that sort of really knocked me about quite a bit.
Yeah. So you're at Braidwood.
So that would have been about 98, I think it was. That was actually, because it would have been around 98 because that's when I got diagnosed with PTSD.
Right.
And they attributed it to one of the incidences at Braidwood. So
right. Okay.
But yeah,
we'll talk a lot about that.
Yep.
So you come back to Penrith.
Yep.
How long was your second stint there for?
A fair while. I stayed at Penrith for a fair while after that. The only reason I left Penrith was I won my sergeant's job out at City Central.
Oh yeah.
So I went to City Central, promoted to sergeant. Again, I can't remember what year that was, but it was a time where headquarters had moved from Sydney to Parramatta.
Parramatta, yeah.
So, in the way the police department works and how they stuff everything up, I'd actually applied for other sergeant's positions, and because I'd won these sergeant positions at Sydney, I thought, well, I'm there for at least 3 years or whatever it was, and then after about being there for 9 months, I get a phone call saying, oh, you applied for this sergeant's job, and I said, yeah, I'm already a substantial sergeant at Sydney. And they said, yeah, well, that's good, because if you still want to go for this job and you're successful, because you're substantial, no one can appeal you. You just get the position, and the position was actually back at Penrith. So, just thinking, like, I was doing the night shifts in Sydney and that, and I thought, well, like the 12-hour shifts, long shifts, travelling home, tired and that, I thought, well, yeah, I'll give it a go. I got nothing to lose. And lo and behold, I went for the interview and got the job back at Penrith. So
something kept bringing you back.
I don't know what it was, but it kept bringing me back to Penrith. And as I said, like the stuff ups with the police service, like all the applications that were done because they'd moved headquarters and that, they all just got put on the back burner, and then they brought them back up again. And then even people that had already won positions, because I was still in the system for these other jobs, you could apply for them, and then because you're already a sergeant, no one had the right to appeal you on it. So a very, very good system they had in place.
Yeah, another podcast. I saw best friends become bitter enemies over that appeals process and start applying for sergeant's jobs, and
it became bitter. Like everyone becomes so personal about it, and were offended by people appealing them, and or someone getting the job over them, and things like that. And
best mates.
Yeah, I saw the best of mates. Friendships just end over bloody fact that one of them got the position over the other person. And, and the process is set up where it's not necessarily the best person that gets the job either. It's
that's right.
Like the whole process is you've got to get your application to the point of where you get accepted to the interview, and then the interview is completely separate to any sort of other interview you do as well. So it takes a couple of goes at the interview before you get experience to be able to nail the interview and stuff like that. So it took me a couple of goes before I actually won the sergeant's position, but as each time going, you learn a bit more experience about what's required. And you're better prepared for the next one. So it definitely isn't a fair system which recognises I suppose a person's experience and as opposed to their interviewing skills.
So you're back at Penrith as a sergeant? Did you leave from there, or whereabouts? What happened from there?
No, I pretty much stayed in Penrith. I worked with the Patrol Intelligence Team, which I think you spent a bit of time with as well. I think it was still called PIT when you went to it. After that point, I had a lot of surgeries as well on my ankle and things like that, so I put into a restricted position in Intel section as an Intel sergeant, and pretty much spend the remaining of my days there, I suppose. But that's just not what I joined the cops for, was to be at a desk job and that. So it's sort of, I wouldn't say cruisy, it was hard, the work, but it's just not what the work I was wanting. The reason why I joined was sort of not there anymore, so it sort of just become a process of going to work day in, day out, and just doing what I had to do. Like in terms of hours, Monday to Friday, weekends off was great, and that quality of life was good.
And what year did you leave?
I was medically discharged in 2012.
Okay, so you've been out for 8 years now.
Been out for 8 years, and I served 24 years.
24 years, so it's quite a few podcast episodes in there.
Yeah, 24. Working with my psychiatrist and psychologist, and that they've worked out that I've got complex post-traumatic stress, which is overexposure, repeated exposures, and they've worked out that there's got to be over 100 that could be relatable to contributing to the complex PTSD. So obviously each one has its different effect on you, and some don't cause me that much stress, and others cause a lot of degree of stress. So.
Yeah, mate. Well, 24 years, so I had a third of that, and mate, 3 times more exposure than what I had. I can't imagine, the effect that would have on you, like knowing what I've experienced, to have 3 times that amount. Support, mental health support that the police lack, and the way the insurance companies deal with mental health is atrocious. So, we'll talk about all that.
Definitely.
Mate, I joined in 97.
Yep.
So started off at Green Valley. So I did
another good little spot.
Yeah. So very similar to Blacktown.
Yep.
So when we were asked at the academy to put in your 3 preferences, I had no idea. The advice from people that were in the cops: go to a busy station, you learn a lot quicker.
Yep.
So I put in for Green Valley, Mount Druitt, and Blacktown, actually, because I was living at Guildford at the time. So never even heard of Green Valley before that. Sounded good. So applied for Green Valley, got that. So I did 3.5 years there. So if you don't know where Green Valley is, it's a suburb just west of Liverpool.
Yep.
A lot of housing commission around Miller, Cartwright, Heckenberg.
Yep.
Ashcroft, Miller. From there, after that I did a year at Cabramatta. Do you remember Operation Bacchini?
Yes.
So, mate, Cabramatta at 99, 2000, that time, that was just an absolute war zone. Thanks to heroin, and mate, I just saw so much there. That was crazy. That year at Cabramatta. From there, same was playing police footy, and had a lot of mates at the time, and really wanted to play with the boys out at Penrith. So Sergeant Mick Connolly at the time went on to be Chief Inspector, last I heard. Yeah, we did some wheeling and dealing and got a transfer over to Penrith. So I did a little bit of time in GDs there, and then, like you said, went into the pit team for about 3 years, I guess, there. After all the search warrants and the stuff that went on there and everything else that had gone on, 2005, I wasn't coping with a lot of stuff, and so I just decided to resign. And not a question, hey. I remember going up to Superintendent Ben Fezchek's office and saying, "Boss, I'm resigning." No problems.
So you knew it was the right decision.
But just not even why. Just like even that lack of support of...
Oh, there's no support.
No, look, all the resources that they put into you, and, you slug it out over, and, just 8 years. And then they just allow people to leave without even questioning.
The amount of time, money invested in you, and everyone refers to you as just being a number, and that just highlights it. That you go and someone just gets a new registered number and they take your place. Yeah,
exactly. Do you remember why did you want to join the cops?
It wasn't really my first choice. It was, I actually wanted to be a PE teacher, and I actually got accepted to university, and Bathurst University it was. And I remember driving up there in probably January 1988, and after I left school, I was day after my last exam for the HSC, I got a job working at Liquorland. Being 18 years of age, haven't been at school all my life, and all of a sudden getting a wage, I thought, how good's this? Like, all of a sudden I had friends I didn't even know I had, because I had the money to go to the club and buy drinks and stuff like that. But, it was good, and a bit of money in that. And then the last thing I thought of, I just can't be bothered doing another year of study. I want a year off. So I went up there and deferred my studies for a year. But when I was at school, we had a career advisement day. And we went up to where it's the University of Western Sydney now. We went up there, and there was just all these tents up there, and everyone was giving us advice on different careers. And I remember going to the police 10, I went to the fire brigade 10, I think it was defence force and all that sort of stuff, and they gave you application packages and things like that. And I remember filling out the application for the fireys and the police, and I submitted them, not expecting too much from them, but it was always like, I guess the appeal of the uniform and the respect that they did have and all that sort of stuff. I guess that's what appealed to me about it, and the fact that it was a career.
Yeah.
And there was obviously other areas that you could branch out into. Like I said, I went to the TRG, and that was an area I wanted to go into, and I ended up doing the OSG training to go into the state protection group eventually. That was my goal to have done. That's where I busted my ankle, actually doing the OSG training. And mate, yeah, and just out of nowhere, like I was working at Liquorland, mate, enjoying my friends from school, like the fact that we'd finished studies and were able to go to the club, and I had some money coming in and I could just enjoy life. And then, mate, out of the blue, I just get a phone call, probably was about February or something like that, and just saying, oh, look, you know, we'd like you to come in for an interview with the police. And I'm going, oh, okay, yeah, fair enough. So, mate, out of the blue, I go to this interview at the old police headquarters opposite Hyde Park there in the city, and I remember going into that.
Yeah, what was your interview like?
Oh, mate, as I said, I'm 18 years of age, and I'm as nervous as all shit. Like, I don't even know what I was wearing, to be honest. Like, it would have been probably the old thin leather tie or something like that.
Yeah.
All I remember is there was, all three of them were massive. Like, well, to me, they appeared massive, and they were just sitting on, it was like they're on the bench in the High Court.
Yep.
And I was on a little seat in front of them, and I got grilled. It was like I was on the stand in a court. Mate, they got me in there, and I've known the reason why now, because they would have seen a fresh young kid out of school,
Yep.
and if I was going to crack in an interview, there was no way I was going to make it on the street.
Yep.
And so they made sure they pushed me to see if I'd break or not. And mate, it was intimidating. Like, I think it was 2 senior sergeants and an inspector, and they were drilling me and they were asking me where I was from. And there used to be an old warb homeless bloke around Penrith. I think they called him Bumper Bill. I can't. But anyway, they were saying, look, if he was to be taken to the station and he's covered in shit and all that sort of stuff, and your sergeant tells you to go and clean him, what would you do? And I said, well, I'd go and clean him. And they'd rip into me for saying that. They'd say, fucking oath you're going to go and clean him, because your sergeant goddamn well fucking ain't going to clean him. So if you don't clean him, who else is going to? And I said, yeah, I said I'd clean him. And they just kept ripping into me. And I said, yeah, but I did say I would clean him. And it was just questions like that every time I'd answer it. They'd say, oh, bloody goddamn oath you would. And I'm saying, yeah, I know, I just said I wouldn't that. But then in the video they said, oh, mate, no, you did well, thanks for that. And I can see now they were grilling me to see if I would, like, break down crying or whether I'd tell them to go and get fucked or something like that. But I think they were testing my temperament to see if I could, because obviously out in the street you're going to cop that, that barrage of people in your face and throwing shit at you and things that you don't want to hear and stuff like that, even if you've told them something and you know it yourself. You can tell people 1,000 times out in the street, like drunk or drug-affected idiots or something like that, and they'll come back at you and they'll test your temperament. Yep. And if I was going to break in an interview, there was obviously no chance they were going to send me down the academy. And so I got through that, and as I said, after the interview, they're shaking my hand and thanking me. They were the nicest blokes I could ever come across. But before that, it's fair dinkum, I was shitting myself. But then a couple of weeks after that, it wasn't even a couple of weeks, I think it might have been a week later, they said, oh, yeah, you've successfully got past the interview stage. We need you to go to Redfern College to do the fitness and medical. And I was fit, so I had no problems with that. Like, at the time I was into running and all that sort of things. And like, I was a skinny, I was 70 kilos. Like that.
70 kilos?
70 kilos. Like, my first warrant card, it had the weight and all that on it. It said 70 kilos, so I was a stick.
Do you know what you weigh now?
I'm 96
You're
kilos.
You're a beast now. Yeah.
I'm 96 kilos now. And these blokes, I reckon, would have been 196 kilos. So, and then I did the medical and fitness and that, and I thought, yeah, okay, fair enough. And here I am still working at Liquorland and that. And then a week after that, I get a phone call saying, oh, we need you to go to Homebush to the uniform factory and get kitted out for your uniform. And I said, okay. And then a day or two after that, I get a letter in the mail saying you're due to start at the college on the 28th of March, 1988.
Jesus.
So, mate, within the space of about 4 or 5 weeks from interview, I was starting at the college. Yeah. And this is what, a couple of months after I just finished my high school certificate. So it was just, like, I gave up my job at Liquorland. Obviously, I'd just deferred uni, so that wasn't a problem. And then all of a sudden, and back then, your first day at the college, you start getting paid. So I was actually a trainee. So I was actually employed by the police at that point.
Yep.
I remember packing and like, mate, I was nervous as anything. Like I'm here I am for the very first time in my life leaving home.
Yep.
And I'm leaving home to go to a college and live, and we only did 12 weeks training then. So
Really?
it was 12 weeks all done and dusted.
Jesus.
So it was March 1988 to June 88. That was my whole training.
And then thrown into Blacktown.
Then thrown into Blacktown. Then you did 12 months of a portfolio to finish, but it was nothing like assignments. And that all you had to do was proper like work. Like you had to attach an occurrence pad to it. You had to put a brief of evidence to it and all that sort of stuff. And then after that, you'd go back to. Well, we went to Redfern because we were metropolitan based.
Yeah.
And you did another 2 or 4 weeks secondary training there.
Yep.
And then you get sworn in as a constable, and that was
Yeah,
it.
right.
So,
do you remember when Goulburn come in?
well, Goulburn was in '88 when I was there.
Okay.
I went to Goulburn College.
Right.
But it was only very small, the college, like all the old, when you go down there and you see the old buildings,
Yep.
that's pretty much all they had down there when I was there. So it was very small. Just like at that stage then the ratio of male to female was only small because the first building was all females and then half the second building was females and males.
Yep.
And fortunately or unfortunately, I was part of the second building where we shared it with females and stuff like that. So, so the ratio wasn't that big, but the college was just very raw.
Yeah.
There wasn't as big as what it is now.
Yeah.
But yeah, we did. But because they couldn't accommodate to do secondary training there, because obviously they had other classes going through, we had to do all the metropolitan based police had to do their secondary training at the Redfern College, which was still operational at the time, but only in a smaller capacity. So and that's where I actually did my TRG training, was at the Redfern College.
Okay.
Although we did do a week or two down at Goulburn because we used the outdoor shooting range down there. So
Yep.
which was an experience.
Yeah, I bet.
To this day, I'd say it's the best course I've ever done.
Yeah.
So pretty good. So.
Yeah. I was playing rugby league at South at the time. I was contracted for the 97 season and basically I'd had a number of injuries which prevented me from starting the start of the year in grade, and Alan Jones, who was the football manager at the time, when I come back from injury, the season had already started.
Yep.
And he said, we want you to go back to Newtown, get your fitness back, and then come back into grade. And I just went, no, I didn't sign to play for Newtown, bad attitude. And so I said, I want a release because I was a bit over it at that time. And so I got a release and what am I going to do now? And my best mate, Pete Curran, he'd been applying for the police for the previous 12 months and he had a number of stuff to do. And he said, look, I'm aiming for the May class. Why don't you just apply, see if you can get in? I went, I've got nothing else I'm doing. So next thing I apply and very quickly get an answer back. So this is early April now. Yep. Can you be at, it was just near Hyde Park, wasn't it, opposite there, the Sydney Police Centre?
Yeah, Sydney Police Centre.
It was,
right. Yeah.
I think I went to, show up here for your interview this time. So yeah, same mate. I think I had a thin black tie as well. And, rock in there and very, very similar experience. So 3 blokes sitting on a panel. I was just sitting on a chair in front of them and the whole interview was going really well, like it was nice. And then one of the blokes on the end who didn't say much through the interview, and he says to me, so I see on your resume that you did athletics at school. And I said, yeah, I did. So I'm 22 at the time. Yeah, I did. And he said, did you ever run 400 metres? And I said, yeah, I did. And he said, how fast did you do it? And I knew I was around the 50s, like 55-ish. So I just said 55 seconds. I run 400 metres. He just looked me straight back in the eye and he said, I think you're lying. And I wasn't sure of myself. I knew it was around that, but and all of my instinct was just to stick with 55 seconds. I said, no, it's from what I remember at the time, that I've run 400 metres, it was 55 seconds. And he said, that's fucking bullshit. And just stared back at me. I went red, my heart is just pounding now, like, what am I going to do? He thinks I'm a liar. And so I said, well, no, it's 55 seconds. That's what I was told that, I ran. And And he said, mate, you would make the fucking Olympics at 55 seconds, so I'm here to tell you you're fucking bullshit. And I said, look, all I can say is that, you know, I was told it was 55 seconds when I ran, and one of the other blokes then jumped in and said, okay, you go to a, you know, there's a bank robbery and you pull up out the front, and basically what do you do? So it's just same thing, like a scenario, you know, would you run in or would you call for backup? Anyway, I chose the call for backup scenario, and anyway, same thing, they said, all right, just wait outside while we have a discussion and then we'll call you back in. And the whole time I'm outside, I'm going, Jesus, you're a fucking dickhead, like, you've just blown that, it was going so well. And they called me back in. I got my tail between my legs, and same, mate. They said, you're a breath of fresh air, and we really liked how you interviewed, and you know, consider yourself in. Congratulations, and you know, sorry about the hard time, but we wanted to see if you changed your story. The time didn't matter. So I learned a lesson out of that. But yeah, that was my introduction, the interview, and then from there, mate, just went and did the physical, the medical, went and got my uniform, sized up, and I was at the academy in May. And just in the same class as my best mate, so 270.
Just happens, mine was 235.
Do you remember your number?
My registered number's 25442.
Yeah,
mine's
31840. Isn't it funny how you write it so many times?
That's will never be forgotten, that number. So,
hey, a quick story about my first day at the academy. So we my mate and I travelled down to Goulburn together, and we pull up, unpack, go to our room, unpack. What else do you do? We go to the bar. So we have a few drinks, and then everyone starts talking about, you know, did you bring your suit? What tie are you wearing tomorrow? And I went, what, suit? What do you mean, like tie? I didn't bring any tie or suit. And they said, yeah, it was in the email. You should have got that, you know, we're supposed to parade tomorrow in a suit. I went, well, fucking jeans and just like collared shirt and jumpers. I don't have a suit. I didn't see that. So at about 5 o'clock in the afternoon, I ring my parents who are in Sydney and said, man, I'm in trouble. I'm the only person here that's shown up without a suit. And to their credit, went inside, grabbed my suit out of the wardrobe.
Oh, really?
And they drove it down to Goulburn, and they got there about 8 o'clock that night. And met in a car park, took the suit, and then I'm glad I sort of found out. Otherwise, I would have rocked up at parade. Imagine first day parade at 8 a.m. and everyone's in a suit and tie, and I'm standing there in jeans and a collared shirt.
Oh, that would have ripped into you.
Fuck. So thanks, Mum and Dad. That was above and beyond. Dead set saved my life.
One of the good times of making the choice to go to the bar paid off, mate.
Yeah, exactly. So, mate, many times have paid off in the bar, right?
A
lot of good times there. Did you enjoy your academy experience?
Mate, to be honest, no. I think I was too young to enjoy it. To be honest, because I was so young, I was homesick. I had a girlfriend at the time, and no mobile phones then. So I couldn't keep in constant contact. Like I remember driving back home every Friday afternoon, doing the big dash from last period straight into the car and then straight up the freeway. And at that stage, the freeway didn't bypass Mittagong either, so you had to drive through the township of Mittagong and all that sort of stuff. So it was a good just over 2 hour trip and things like that. And then I'd spend the weekend with my girlfriend, catch up with the family and things like that. And then I remember the drive, because we had curfew, what time you had to be back on a Sunday evening and that. So I remember having to say goodbye to her, and it was like just being young and that was upsetting and all that sort of stuff. So it was, I didn't really enjoy it, and I was very loyal to her as well. So I didn't, I'd go and have a drink up at the bar and that, but I'd always one or two and then go back to the room and stuff like that. And then I'd go out, like, I was only down there for 12 weeks. I was, 12 Thursdays. That was pretty much it. So I probably would have gone to half a dozen, Thursday nights out or whatever it is. At that stage then, it wasn't Tully Park or anything like that. It was just the old workers club in town and that. And, massive fire hazard. I don't know how. Like, you walk along the carpet and that, and your feet just stick to it because of the amount of alcohol and shit that would have been spilled all over it. And they were good nights and that, but I didn't really enjoy it because I think I was too young and I was more homesick than anything else. And it was my first experience living away from home. Mate, I was immature. I was no way prepared to be down there. Like you said, you were 22 when you joined. Mate, you had a bit of life experience. Like, mate, I hadn't experienced anything in the world. So but I remember the first day down there and intimidating. Like we'll put into, I think it was lecture theatre 1 or whatever it was, a massive big lecture theatre, and sitting in there with all these people, and it was like we were in there for about 4 hours or 5 hours, and then this was a Sunday afternoon, and we're just signing our life away, like, you know, sign this paperwork, sign that paperwork, sign this paperwork, and that's where I found out over time that I signed it was SAS, it was a superannuation scheme at the time, and it was a very brand new super scheme. They were getting rid of the old one, the PWS, whatever it is, where you're entitled to a pension if you're medically discharged, and that was to change on the 1st of April, and we were down there before the 1st of April, and we were actually employed by the police, but they got us to sign off on a new super scheme, and they sort of threw it into us. And I remember a couple of blokes, older blokes, that were sort of a bit more switched on, and they were refusing to sign it because they obviously knew the benefits and stuff like that, and me being just a naive young kid, and a lot of other people were just signing off. And hence down the track, when I did get medically discharged and trying to find out whether I'd be entitled to the pension or whether I'd be entitled to just blue ribbon health, whatever it was. And I know there's been people that have been trying to have that decision overturned, because technically, like, all my long service and that was all started from the 28th of March, not when I was attested. But they keep going, it's on your attestation date for where you're covered for medical purposes. So it's like one rule for one, and it was all about cost saving. Like, all they had to do was wait till our class had gone through, and they could have started with the next class, because they would have started after that date, and there wouldn't have been any crossover period at all. So,
as usual, a mess.
Mate, it was a mess, and I've actually I had my ribs busted when I was at Blacktown. We were dragging a drunken idiot off the train station. Then when we were carrying him down the stairs, he decided to all of a sudden start wriggling and that, and we all fell down the stairs, and I copped his knee into my ribs and broke 3 ribs. And when I put the injury report through, it was put through as pre-88.
Right.
And it was actually accepted as a pre-88 claim. And there were another of other claims, like I got stabbed with a syringe once, a used syringe, and again that was put through as a pre-88 claim. But then when you try and all these other claims, and then some admin staff were saying, no, that's got to be post-88, that's got to be pre-88 and all that sort of stuff, and it just got so mixed up. But then over time they just said, well, what's your superannuation scheme? And because I'd signed on to SAS, they said, well, that's what you're covered under, you're not pre-88. So, but all I remember is being put into this massive, the lecture room down there, the big one, the big theatre, and just signing everything. And being young, mate, I was just signing it because I was told to sign it. Like, you know, it wasn't a case of, oh, I want to take time and read this. It was just sign what's put in front of you and just,
Mate, 22 is same. I was signing my life away. I was signing forms that I don't even remember what they were now.
No,
I was signing
idea,
heaps of shit.
Yeah.
And we'll talk a lot about how, you know, in later episodes, the struggle that you've had because of that situation.
Oh, massive,
and, you know, what's been done about it. You know, are there other people involved in that crossover situation? As you said, if they had just waited to have the whole process start with the next class.
Well, logically it would have, and it would take away that thing. Well, we actually were employed before that date. So if we were injured in that week before it did change over, a week and a half, whatever it was, by law we would have had to have been covered under the old scheme.
Yeah.
So, because the other scheme wouldn't have taken effect.
Yeah.
So I'd hate to have seen what the dynamics of that would have been if someone had been injured at that time. So, but common sense would dictate that, well, we've got a class starting in April, let's wait until that class starts before we change it over. And I think it was mine and another class that were already down there that were the only 2 classes affected by that changeover. So the other classes were clearly defined by the fact they were in after that date and not down there during that date. So,
mate, a lot to talk about, haven't we?
Yeah, mate, the way they handle things, the police service, it's surprising they still exist, actually. I think if they were private sector, they'd be long gone. But I think it's the fact that the government is that, and there's always a need for them. They'll always survive, but I don't think they'll. It's definitely not by management. That's for sure. So,
with the first episode, I wanted to just share an experience that we've both had. If you don't mind, delivering a death message was always a definitely something that I struggle still with these days with remembering.
Yep.
Do you have a death message that, one thing I wanted to do was be real and raw with people about what policing's about too.
Yeah.
It's not what you see on TV, and it affects families, affects police, it affects ambos, fireys on scenes.
Yep.
We all go through it. So, do you remember a death message that you delivered that
Yeah, mate, I
stands
do.
out?
I don't know how many I did during the service, and that was, but there's so many that you do deliver. The more senior you get, obviously, the more you deliver, because it's always handed to the senior person or the senior car crew.
Yep.
When I first joined and working with senior officers, I attended them, but mostly as a junior person, and they took charge of them. So there were a couple that I attended to, but the very first one that I've sort of really got a good memory of, and it's still to this day, it's upsetting because of the circumstances. It was pretty much elderly bloke was hit by a car over in the Seven Hills LAC, which Blacktown at that point, Seven Hills wasn't a 24-hour station, so we looked after their area as well. And pretty much after he got hit, he was walking from his place to get a bus to go into Blacktown to do some shopping, and him and his wife had just come up from Victoria to attend their daughter's wedding that weekend.
Wow.
So he was going to hand away the bride on that weekend. He was going to Blacktown to do some shopping, I think get a haircut and all that. And when he was crossing the road to get the bus, hit by a car, ambos picked him up. He died on the way to Westmead Hospital. So we had to go to the house of his daughter and deliver obviously the death message. And they were of Italian background, massive big house, big family, everyone was there. Upon telling the mother, she obviously went into hysterics, had a break, which we thought was a heart attack at the time. She completely just collapsed and all that sort of stuff, and we started doing CPR on that because she just completely, was flipped out and was just non-responsive and things like that, and we had to call an ambulance to come in, and thankfully, the ambulance got there. She was revived and all that sort of stuff. She survived that, but the whole wedding was ruined, obviously. The daughter was, they were all up planning for the wedding, and her dad had come up from Melbourne with the mum and that, and just in a split second. That's the thing that's the hardest thing, I suppose, to comprehend when you deliver those messages is, you're telling people that have probably said goodbye, kissed their loved ones goodbye, and they've gone and they never return.
Yeah.
That one always stays in my memory because just the impact of, knowing that they were up for just the wedding to give, obviously, I don't know, I never followed up whether they did. I doubt they would have had the wedding on the weekend, they just possibly couldn't have gone through it, but even when they would have probably got married, it would never have been the same knowing her dad wasn't walking her down the aisle and things like that.
Yeah.
And that sticks with you, it's just, how can it not stick with you? They're up for a joyous occasion, and then in a split second, life's just taken away from you.
Yeah.
And just, I know I was only talking about one, but the other one, which when I was a Braidwood, and as I said, this was the first one that I attended when I was a father, and it impacted me then because 2 young boys were killed in a car crash, and I had to go to Canberra morgue to have the bodies identified to the parents because we hadn't identified them at that stage. And I was working by myself, so I had to go to, after being at the accident scene for 6-7 hours or however long it was, because by the time accident investigation came down from Wollongong and all that sort of stuff, it was just time. And by the time I got into the morgue in at Canberra, it was about 2 in the morning, and I remember meeting both sets of families there. And at that stage, they'll sort of both, which you would be in denial, hope it's not them, hope it's not them. And then the setup at the morgue was only one, they could only view one body at a time. So I remember going in with the first family, and then as soon as they saw it was their son, they just broke down, and then I could hear from the other room the mother of the other son just completely losing her shit because she obviously, the reality had dawned that it was their kids. And then, mate, I just, in an instant, I just could feel their angst because that was the first time I was a father.
Yeah.
So I could relate to what they'll, whereas before, I couldn't relate to what it was like as a parent to lose a kid.
Yeah.
But that was the first time I could relate as being a father, what it would feel like to actually lose a kid.
Yeah.
And just to hear the anguish. And to this day, I can still hear her screams coming from that room.
Were you emotional at the time?
Mate, massive. Like my eyes were welling up. I was struggling to keep it together because you still had a job to do.
Yeah.
And that's the hardest thing. You've got to put it aside. You're meant to be professional, but at the end of the day, you're just a human being too.
Yeah.
And trying to maintain professionalism and not break down and cry in front of them and that. Like my eyes were welling, and I'd obviously have to turn around and give it a wipe, or excuse myself and go do something and just sort of check myself and come back in. But mate, it was tough. And then I remember I did cry on the way back from Canberra all the way out to Braidwood and stuff like that. And then, and this is where the insensitivity of the police service is, because I was at a one-man station. As I said, I've been at a fatality all afternoon. And I remember the day as clear as day. It was because Manly were playing Brisbane, and Brisbane were playing in like a canary yellow jersey or something like that, because of the clash of the colours and stuff like that. And it ended up being like, I think Manly were down 22-0 and came back and it was a 22 draw. And I was listening to it on the radio, and then all of a sudden the beeps come over the radio, possible fatality. Then it was confirmed it was a double fatality, and then there was reports that there could be a young child in the back seat and all that sort of stuff. And it just all started snowballing and all that. And then so I was at this accident scene all afternoon, all evening. Had to go into Canberra, do ID and all that. Like I was probably 12 or so hours just dealing with this one incident, and then on the way back from Canberra to Braidwood, like I said, I was fairly emotional and upset. And I remember radio then ringing me and saying, "Oh yeah, you're Braidwood 16, you're on your way back out to Braidwood." "Yeah, oh, we just got an alarm going off at the shops at Braidwood. Do you mind attending that on your way back?"
Yep.
And I'm thinking, even then, like, no, everything you've gone through, like, okay, it's on my way there, but they still want to load you up with jobs. Like, they still just see you as just there to do job. And I had to get up at I had to go back to the morgue the next morning, because I had to then go and ID obviously the bodies to the coroner and that. So I had to get up early the next morning regardless. Had paperwork to complete, and then I remember getting home, and Diane had she'd left me a glass of scotch on the table with a note, just come to bed when you're ready, and I wish I was there for you. So I remember that. And like the two death messages, I said, like, they're sort of like a first in both aspects, because the second one, as I said, was the first time I experienced it as a parent.
Yeah.
And hearing a parent's anguish at losing a child is something that haunts me, and I don't know how I'd handle that.
Yeah.
I just don't think I could.
Yeah.
And as I said, it stays with me to this day, because I'm scared shitless that I'd have to do the same thing myself one day.
Yeah.
So,
the parents that go in and view the body and identify them, the courage that takes.
Mate, it'd have to be. I experienced it. It would be the worst feeling.
Yeah.
Someone, to go and see something that you brought life into the world, and then know that it's been taken.
Did you have
especially for the mother,
Yeah.
It would be horrendous.
Yeah.
So,
did you have any contact with the families of either of those afterwards?
Yeah, I did. Yeah. Both of them remain fairly much in contact with me in that for a while. I actually went down to which was, I was in hospital, and part of my treatment to get over that one, I actually had to go back down and visit the scene.
Really?
So I drove to Braidwood, and I found the tree they'd gone into, and all that. There's a little plaque on there and stuff like that, and a couple of old flowers. And then what was even more, that wasn't a traumatic scene, but when I was there and I was walking around the grass and that, I kicked thing, there was still, like, this was years and years afterwards, like probably a decade afterwards, there was still parts of the wreck, still the grass had all grown over it, and just like obviously
fair dinkum.
Yeah, still parts of the car were still around the tree, dirt and grass all over it and stuff like that.
How did that make you feel?
Mate, it upset me, yeah. I'm just thinking, like, you think they clean it all up, but then there's just that. And I'd imagine, like, the flowers and the plaque, and that the parents and that would probably view that and go there every now and again to, pay their respects. Like that. Well, it's like their final resting place, but it's a place where they're taken. So that was interesting going there, but I had to do that for a bit of closure, I suppose, and to be able to talk about it. I suppose I did get that closure, because it's as difficult as it is. I can talk about it now.
Yeah.
It took me a long time to be able to process that, and as I said in other episodes, I'll be able to, there's a lot more to that one, because that had a lot of ramifications for my daughter in later life as well. That one, just with certain aspects of that, she blames herself because my feelings from that one were instantly her protection and stuff like that. So she thinks that because of that, that's what caused my PTSD.
Right.
So just that misunderstanding there.
We're going to speak about that in the next episode, I think.
Sort of, and it's caused her, and that's the other effect of it's not just us that experiences, it's our close loved ones that experiences as well. Right?
Yep.
They get a secondary cop of it, and it impacts not just yourself, it impacts those closest to you.
Yeah, exactly.
And when you're caught up in your own world of pain and that, you don't see that. And it's only when it's told to you that you actually see what you've actually caused and the damage that you've done.
Yeah.
And I think that's even harder to take than knowing what you've done yourself. It's the impact that you've done to the loved ones and the people closest to you.
Yeah.
So what about yourself, mate? What was your first death message?
One that really sticks out for a number of reasons. One, it was the first one I had to do. You know, I'd been to them before, but it was the first one that I actually had to speak. And I guess just the circumstances around it, I just can't ever get over it. But it was a fatal car accident where a gentleman had a heart attack. He was in his late 50s and he'd had a heart attack, and obviously car left the road and went down an embankment, and so he died at the scene, and it was on the Northern Road at just coming out of St Mary's Patrol and into Green Valleys Patrol, just near the back of Bringelly there.
Yep. And
the gentleman lived at Campbelltown. So we arrive at the scene, and you know we do what we need to do there, and grab the identification off him, and obviously he'd been at work and he was heading home to Campbelltown via the Northern Road. So the constable that I was working with at the time, Lee, we start heading towards Campbelltown to, you know, advise the family, and you know, it was pretty quiet. And she just turns to me and says, "Have you delivered a death message before?" And I said, "No, I haven't." And she said, "Well, you're about to do your first one." And straight away, I just got so nervous. You know, I don't know. You don't know what to say. You can plan these. Yeah. And I remember, okay, this is what I'm going to say. I just sat there and just started processing that. This is what I'm going to say. This is what I'm going to say. And we get to Campbelltown, pull up in front of the house, brace myself, and we go in. And I knock on the door. A boy, he's probably about 9 years old. He answers the door.
Yep. And
I said, "Oh, g'day mate, is mum home?" And he said, "Nah, she's still at work, but dad'll be home any minute." And like, even just saying that, like the goosebumps now is, like, I'll never forget him saying that.
Yeah.
And like he said, like, I don't have kids, but I've got nephews now, and they're at that age, and sometimes I'll hear them say stuff about dad, and I just automatically go back to that moment. And I said, "Oh, okay, mate, you know, we need to speak to mum, so do you know when she'll be home?" And anyway, he says, "Oh, she should be home by 5 o'clock, and it's like 4 o'clock. So I said, "All right, we'll come back." So we went, sat around the corner for, you know, an hour.
Yep.
And then, see mum drive into the driveway and basically go back to the front door and, you know, said, "Oh, are we able to talk to you? Is there somewhere the kids can go for the time being?" And she said, "Oh, you know, what's wrong? And I said, "Oh, we just need to talk to you about some things." And she said, "Oh, well, the kids can go next door." So she arranged that. The kids went next door, and she come back, and I just said, "Look, unfortunately, your husband has been killed in a car accident." And just the realisation on her face.
Yeah.
And then we took her in our car back to Penrith, because that's where the body had been taken, for her again to identify the body.
Yep.
And what do you talk about in the car going from Campbelltown to Penrith with someone who you've just told that your husband's been killed in a car accident, because at that time we didn't know he'd had a heart attack. He'd just, so didn't really know if he'd been run off the road or he fell asleep or anything. So there was so many what ifs from her, and she's crying and asking questions. And luckily for us at that time, when we got back to Nepean, there was like a minister there, and so he took over with her, which is I remember now being so helpful, because I didn't know what to say to her any further. You just don't know. And so by the time other family members arrived, and it's about 7 o'clock at night by the time we leave the hospital, we drive back to Campbelltown to drop her off, and then we come back from Campbelltown back to Green Valley, and like it was a 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. shift, so it's 11 p.m. Walk out the door, no nothing, see you later, and then had to be back at 6 a.m. the next day to do it all over again. Well, actually the constable that was she was in charge of the job, so she went to the coroner. But just being back there, like you said, there's just no follow up. It was just like straight back into alarms and domestics and neighbour disputes. But mate, that's just one that that we'll share so many over the time. But that's just one that really sticks out, because the way he just said to me at that door, Mum's not home, but Dad will be home any minute, and you're there to tell him that Dad, you're never going to see your dad again. I can't ever not be affected by that. As much as I've tried to just get on with it, whenever I see kids and they'll talk about, Dad will be home, or it just straight back to that door standing there. So
mate, it's just you can't get away from feeling guilty about it. Like I know the ones that I've delivered, that you just feel guilty for having to tell them. I know someone's got to do it, but and there's no textbook way of doing it.
No.
And the worst, as you said, they drive back to Penrith. Even when you're sitting at the house and you can't leave them there. You can't just say, well, guess what, such and such is dead, see you later. You've got to try and arrange support for them and then usually that takes a little bit of time before it comes and that. So you've got to sit with them, and you just do not know what to talk about. You can say, well, do you want me to make a cup of tea or something like that? Or, is there anything you wanted me to do around the house for you? Or, you just try and fill the time in, but it's just, and that's all it is just trying to fill time in, because apart from delivering the death message, you've got nothing in common with the person. You don't know who they are. And it is so difficult, because you feel guilty that you've just, in the space of 5 minutes or whatever time it takes to deliver it, you've just ruined this person's life in an instant. You've delivered the worst possible news you could deliver to anyone. And as I said, like the son thinking Dad's on his way home and stuff like that, and you knowing that no, that's not going to happen. Like, and that's the thing. Like that's probably the hardest job in the whole cops, I reckon. Yeah, definitely. Like seeing mangled bodies and all that sort of stuff like that. In a sort of way, it's some of the things I've seen. It just seems surreal, and you sort of can't make sense that it is actually reality. Because it's just so fucked up or messed up. When you deliver, then you actually do see the raw emotion from someone that it's like you've hurt them. It's like it's you hurting them. When it's not you, but you're just delivering the worst possible news, but you actually feel you've hurt them. And that's the hardest thing to cut. And the fact too is, because of the role that you're playing there, you have to be the strong one. Even though you've been to the scene, you've seen the carnage, and you've seen the body. Then you've had to prepare yourself for it, and then you have to deliver it. Emotionally, you're spent already. Absolutely. So I encourage anyone who's currently in the police that if when you're delivering death messages or anything that you see,
talk about it. Don't use alcohol to mask it like we did. Seek out someone that you trust. And because I didn't talk about that for a long time, and it ate me alive. But the times when I do talk about it, I do feel better. Like I do feel a release from it, even though it'll never go away. I just feel a release of it.
Yeah.
So I just encourage anyone who's currently serving or hasn't spoken about experiences to reach out to someone and just talk about it. It may help.
It does help. And then even when you talk about it, if you feel sad or you feel like you're going to cry, just cry.
Just cry, yep.
Just let it out, because that's the only way. The more you bottle it up, it's like a Coke bottle. You shake it up, shake it up, shake it up. Eventually it's going to come out, and it's going to come out usually in an unhealthy way. If your emotions are there, you just got to allow them.
Yep.
Otherwise, those healthy emotions of crying or feeling sad, whatever it is, they become unhealthy emotions where you take it out into anger or violence or, substance or alcohol abuse or something like that, or infidelity or something like that. It then comes out in another form. Because you need that escapism anyway.
Yeah.
And a lot of it is to mask what you're feeling. So if you're denying your own feelings to come out, you're going to take it out in another way, and it's generally an unhealthy way.
100%.
Which has massive ramifications.
Yeah, yeah.
Which I know we're going to be talking about later on in that, but it does. And as I said, like even that one that I did at Canberra, and that, like, I was breaking on the inside. I was absolutely broken, but I had to try and keep myself together for their sake. And like, I should have been allowed, or I should have felt comfortable where I could have just gone to a room and just let my tears come out and bawl my eyes out and not feel that I was going to be judged by it. And I look back now, and I don't think the family would have had any ill will towards me if I'd done that. And I probably would have showed to them that I was a compassionate person, and that what's happened to them has affected me because I'm human as well, and that I can feel their pain.
Yeah, exactly.
It would show me in a different light, but because you've got that thing, well, no, I'm wearing this uniform, I've got this armour on, I can't show emotion.
Yeah.
And it's a job, it's a professional job, but at the end of the day, we're only people.
Yeah, like 100%. You're just human, and you just need to, we experience the same emotions as what everyone else does.
Well, we do.
And we weren't trained in that.
You're not.
You're never trained on how to deliver a death message.
But not only that, you're not untrained either. When you leave, like, that's the thing that I've noticed, there's no detraining. You're left to your own device how to work out how to live the rest of your life, having been, and I'm still going through it now, like trying to desensitize, well, not so much desensitize, but just make sense of what you've been through and learn to be able to cope with it.
Yep.
And knowing from the police, and even now, like being, like as I said, the car goes off there, and straight away your senses kick in because you're so highly, and I imagine it'd be the same as defence personnel and fireys and ambos. Because you get trained and you're repeatedly doing it over and over and over, like with football skills. You do a skill over and over again, it becomes secondary nature.
Yep.
That's the same with the police. You do things over and over again, it becomes secondary nature. So you see someone sus, you watch them, you'd see what they're doing. And sirens, if I hear a siren, I'm, straight away my attention's diverted, my pulse rate goes, I'm agitated, I'm wondering where they're going, is it something that I've been to, is it something similar, are they going, it's that curiosity and that just training that just takes over. Yeah. Like even when you're in the cops and you hear a siren, you think, I wonder what job's that going to be, like you're waiting for the radio to start calling you to go to whatever job it is and stuff like that. And and that never leaves you, and you never get detrained from it.
No, so, exactly.
Our senses are going to be heightened for the rest of our lives, and that's something. Like even the fact when we have to go to a restaurant or somewhere or a cafe, and you have to have your back up against the wall to observe all the exits and be familiar with your surroundings and stuff like that. I went and had breakfast yesterday morning with my daughter and ex-wife Diane, and they'd got there before me, and they'd already set the table up in a corner, and they'd made sure that I had the seat right in the corner because they just knew that was my seat. And I even made a comment, and they said, we knew you'd want to sit there. And they just know. Everyone's conditioned by it, Everyone's conditioned by it, and they just know that's where I'd feel comfortable, and they went out of their way to make sure I felt comfortable being sitting there in their company and that. And I hate living like that. I'd love to just be able to go into a place and just totally relax and not care who's behind me, not care who walks in. I'm envious of those people that have had those lives where they haven't seen anything bad happen. I'd love to have that pure innocence of thinking, once everyone goes to bed at night, nothing happens in the world.
Yeah.
You know,
That's where things are
everyone's
ramping up.
Yeah,
isn't it?
that's when everything ramps. And that's the thing, like, people don't see that side of life.
Yeah.
And I'd love to have that innocence or that, you know, just ignorance of not knowing what does go on.
Yeah.
It'd be bliss.
Yeah.
It would absolutely be bliss. So,
mate, thank you.
alright, mate.
We'll wrap it up there with a storm coming in.
Looks like it, yeah.
Mate, thanks for sharing that.
No, mate, thanks for sharing yours too.
We've got plenty of episodes to go, and
Definitely.
you know, we wanted to bring on guests from New South Wales Ambulance, New South Wales Fire and Rescue, Defence, nursing.
Yep.
So this is not just about police. It's just going to develop into talking about the experiences of, you know, those on 000 and those in defence, and you know, experiences we've had and how we've dealt with those after we've left. So yeah, anyone who's listening, thank you, and see you next time.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mark.
Cheers, mate.